Captain Velox felt his stomach drop as he stared at the flashing red warnings across his control panel. The massive luxury ship Star's Grace was dying around him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The engines had exploded without warning, leaving them powerless and drifting through space like a piece of garbage. But this wasn't just any patch of space. This was the Void Sector, the most dangerous region in the known galaxy. The ship groaned as another wave of deadly radiation washed over them. Velox's 4 eyes tracked the numbers climbing higher and higher on his screens. In 6 hours, maybe 7 if they were lucky, the radiation would cook everyone aboard. 50,000 innocent passengers from 12 different worlds were counting on him to save them, and he was completely helpless. The passenger decks were already in chaos. Through the security cameras, Velox could see families huddling together in fear. Children were crying while their parents tried to comfort them with lies about everything being okay. The shopping areas and restaurants that had been filled with laughter just hours before were now empty except for scattered belongings left behind by panicking crowds. His communications officer, a young female from his own world, worked frantically at her station. Her normally steady hands were shaking as she sent out emergency signals in every direction. The distress beacon was broadcasting their location and desperate situation to every civilized planet within range. "Captain," she called out, her voice cracking with stress. "We're getting responses from the Federation worlds." Velox rushed to her station, hope filling his chest for the first time since the disaster began. Surely someone could help them. The galaxy was full of advanced civilizations with powerful ships and brilliant minds. Someone would have a solution. But as he read the incoming messages, that hope crumbled into dust. Every single response was the same. The Altarian Defense Force said it was impossible. The Centaurian fleet called it a suicide mission. Even the mighty Draconian Empire, with their massive battleships, refused to enter the Void Sector. The radiation levels were too high. The gravitational fields were too unstable. The solar storms would tear any ship apart before it could reach them. One message after another brought the same crushing reality. No one was coming. No one could come. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, with all their technology and knowledge, were powerless against the Void Sector's fury. The communications officer kept working, her face wet with tears she was trying to hide. She expanded the search, reaching out to smaller worlds, independent colonies, even pirate fleets. Anyone who might be desperate or crazy enough to attempt a rescue. Most didn't even bother to respond. A few sent back polite messages expressing their sympathy but explaining why they couldn't help. The radiation alone would kill their crews before they got halfway to the Star's Grace. The electromagnetic storms would fry their navigation systems. The gravitational anomalies would crush their ships like tin cans. Velox slumped in his captain's chair, feeling the weight of 50,000 lives pressing down on him. He had commanded luxury cruises for over 30 years, taking wealthy passengers on safe, comfortable tours of beautiful star systems. Nothing had prepared him for this. Nothing could have prepared him for watching helplessly as everyone under his protection slowly died from radiation poisoning. The ship's doctor was already reporting the first signs of radiation sickness in the passenger areas closest to the hull. Nausea, dizziness, weakness. It would get much worse before the end came. Then his communications officer spoke up again, her voice barely a whisper. "Sir, there's one more response coming in. It's from a system I've never heard of before. Sol 3, they call themselves. Earth." Velox had heard whispers about Earth in the darkest corners of spaceports and trading stations. It was supposedly a death world, a planet so hostile that any normal species would die within minutes of setting foot on its surface. The stories claimed it was covered in poisonous gases, deadly weather, and radiation levels that would sterilize most known life forms. The beings who lived there were called Deathworlders by those brave enough to speak of them at all. Barbaric creatures who had somehow survived their toxic homeworld through pure stubbornness and violence. Most civilized people dismissed the stories as myths or exaggerations. "What do they say?" Velox asked, not daring to hope. His officer's eyes went wide as she read the message. They say they're coming, Captain. They'll reach us in 18 hours. 18 hours? Velox stared at the numbers on his screen. Even if such a journey were possible, which every expert in the galaxy said it wasn't, 18 hours would put the humans right in the middle of a massive solar storm. The kind of storm that could melt the hull off a ship in seconds. What could these Deathworlders possibly do that the galaxy's greatest civilizations could not? Admiral Jack Thompson stood tall on the command deck of the UES Resilience, his weathered hands gripping the rail as he watched the controlled chaos around him. 50 of Earth's most advanced rescue ships were preparing for what every other species in the galaxy called a suicide mission. But Thompson had seen worse. Much worse. The bridge buzzed with activity as his crew ran through their final checks. Unlike the panic-stricken aliens on the stranded cruise ship, every human moved with calm precision. They had trained for disasters like this their entire lives. Growing up on Earth meant learning to survive when everything went wrong. Engineering reports all systems green, called out his chief engineer, a grizzled veteran named Pete who had served on rescue missions in Earth's most dangerous regions. Radiation shielding is at maximum. Hull reinforcement is holding steady. Thompson nodded, watching the tactical display showing the void sector in all its deadly glory. Massive solar storms raged across the region like hurricanes made of pure energy. Gravitational fields twisted space itself into knots that could crush a normal ship instantly. Radiation levels spiked so high they could cook a man in seconds. It was exactly the kind of place humans had learned to call home. Admiral, we're getting communication from Captain Hayes on the Iron Will, his communications officer reported. Captain Lisa Hayes appeared on the main screen, her face calm despite the chaos surrounding her ship. Behind her, Thompson could see her crew working with the same steady determination that had made Earth's rescue services legendary among the few species brave enough to work with humans. All ships report ready for departure, Admiral, Hayes said, checking her tablet. Navigation has plotted our course through the worst of the storm systems. We're using them as cover and speed boosters, just like we do with Earth's hurricane seasons. Thompson smiled grimly. Other species saw the void sector's storms as impossible barriers. Humans saw them as useful tools. It was all about perspective. The communication system crackled to life with a desperate voice from the stranded cruise ship. This is Captain Velox of the Star's Grace. Did you say 18 hours? Our computers show that timeline is physically impossible. The radiation levels alone would kill any crew before you reached halfway. Captain Roberts from the heavy cruiser Storm Chaser laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both comforting and slightly terrifying. His ship was already powering up its engines, ready to dive headfirst into hell itself. Captain Velox, with all due respect, we're from a planet where the weather tries to murder us every single day, Roberts said, his voice carrying the easy confidence of someone who had survived Earth's worst natural disasters. Tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, ice storms that can freeze you solid in minutes. The void sector. This is just another Tuesday for us. Thompson watched his tactical display as the fleet began moving into formation. Each ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, built not for comfort or luxury, but for survival in the most hostile environments imaginable. Their hulls could withstand pressures that would crush alien vessels like empty cans. Their shields were designed to handle radiation levels that would sterilize entire worlds. All ships, this is Admiral Thompson, he announced over the fleet communication channel. We have 50,000 innocent people counting on us. I know the odds look bad to everyone else in the galaxy, but we've beaten worse odds before. Remember Hurricane Patricia back on Earth? Remember the Yellowstone evacuation? This is what we do. This is what we're built for. A chorus of confirmations came back from his captains. These weren't desperate volunteers hoping for glory. These were professional rescue workers who had spent their lives pulling people out of impossible situations. They had trained in Earth's deepest oceans, highest mountains, and most radioactive wastelands. The void sector was just another challenge to overcome. The alien rescue coordinators from various Federation worlds were watching through long-range sensors, their voices filled with disbelief as they transmitted warnings and predictions of doom. Their computer models showed total mission failure within the first hour. Their experts calculated radiation exposure levels that should kill the human crews before they even reached the danger zone. But humans had never been good at listening to experts who told them something was impossible. They had a bad habit of proving experts wrong. "Jump drives are ready, Admiral," reported his navigation officer. "Course is plotted through the storm systems. We'll use the gravitational fields to slingshot us faster than normal hyperspace travel." Thompson took one last look at the tactical display showing the swirling chaos of the void sector. Somewhere in that nightmare, 50,000 terrified passengers were waiting for help that every computer in the galaxy said would never come. "All ships, initiate jump. Time to show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do." The human fleet vanished into hyperspace, diving straight into the heart of the void sector's fury while alien observers watched their sensor readings in stunned, horrified silence. The human rescue fleet tore through the void sector like sharks cutting through bloody water. What should have been a death trap became their personal highway to salvation. Admiral Thompson watched from his bridge as his ships performed maneuvers that would make alien physicists weep in disbelief. Captain Hayes pushed her destroyer Iron Will straight into a massive solar radiation storm that was painting her hull with enough energy to power a small city. The radiation levels were so intense that they were literally glowing on the sensor screens. Any other species would have turned their ships into floating coffins within seconds, but Hayes was grinning like she was riding a roller coaster. "Admiral, these plasma currents are beautiful," Hayes reported over the communication channel, her voice filled with genuine excitement. "I'm riding the solar wind like we used to surf the jet streams during Earth's storm seasons. We're getting a 30% speed boost from this radiation storm." Thompson nodded, remembering his own days flying rescue missions through Earth's worst weather. Hurricane hunters, they called themselves. Pilots crazy enough to fly directly into the eye of massive storms to save people trapped in the chaos. The galaxy's most dangerous region was just another storm system to navigate. Lieutenant Dave Miller at the navigation station suddenly straightened in his chair, his instruments lighting up with new warnings. "Admiral, massive asteroid field directly ahead. The rocks are the size of mountains, and they're moving fast. Federation protocols recommend going around, but that would add 6 hours to our journey." Thompson didn't even hesitate. 6 hours was 6 hours too many when 50,000 lives were counting on them. "Punch straight through it, Lieutenant. All ships, maintain formation and prepare for impact." The alien rescue coordinators monitoring from safe distances screamed warnings over the emergency channels. Their computer models showed the asteroid field as an impenetrable wall of death. Rocks moving at incredible speeds, each one capable of tearing a ship in half on impact. No sane captain would attempt to fly through such a deadly obstacle course. But humans had never been accused of being entirely sane. The rescue fleet accelerated directly into the asteroid field without slowing down. The first impacts came within seconds as house-sized rocks slammed into their hulls with the force of nuclear explosions. The sounds echoed through the ships like thunder, but the reinforced armor held strong. Captain Roberts on the Storm Chaser was having the time of his life, weaving between asteroids the size of office buildings while his ship absorbed impacts that would have vaporized any Federation vessel. His heavy cruiser was built like a flying tank, designed to survive anything Earth's hostile environment could throw at it. "This is just like flying through a hailstorm back home," Roberts laughed as another asteroid bounced off his ship's armored nose. "Remember that tornado season in Kansas? This is nothing compared to dodging debris in those wind tunnels." But the real show was happening on the edge of the asteroid field, where the massive gravitational pull of a nearby black hole was bending space itself into impossible shapes. The alien observers watched in horror as Captain Roberts deliberately steered his ship toward the crushing gravitational forces that should have torn his vessel apart atom by atom. Instead of running from the black hole, Roberts was using it like a cosmic slingshot. His ship rode the gravitational waves like a surfer catching the perfect wave, using the incredible forces to accelerate far beyond normal engine capabilities. The crushing gravity that would have flattened any other ship became a speed boost that sent the storm chaser rocketing toward their destination. Aboard the stranded cruise ship Star's Grace, Captain Velox was glued to his sensor displays, watching the impossible rescue unfold in real time. His 4 eyes were wider than they had ever been as he tracked the human ships performing maneuvers that violated everything he knew about space travel. "Navigation officer," Velox whispered, his voice filled with awe and terror. "What are we seeing here?" His navigation officer, a brilliant scientist from the Altarian Academy, was frantically running calculations on his computer. The results kept coming back as impossible, so he kept running them again, hoping for different answers. "Captain, they're using the black hole's gravity well as a slingshot," the officer stammered. "They're riding gravitational waves like they're ocean currents. And that radiation storm that should have killed them? They're using the plasma flows to boost their engine efficiency." Velox felt his understanding of the universe shift. These humans weren't just surviving impossible conditions. They were turning those deadly forces into tools. They were weaponizing the very dangers that kept other species away from the void sector. The asteroid field that should have been an impenetrable barrier became their shortcut. The radiation storm that should have cooked them alive became their fuel. The black hole that should have crushed them into nothing became their catapult. "Sir," his communications officer called out, her voice trembling with disbelief. "They're not just coming to rescue us. They're actually having fun doing it." Captain Roberts just transmitted a message saying this is better than their annual disaster training exercises back on Earth. Velox stared at the display showing the human ships dancing through death itself like it was a gentle breeze. For the first time since the disaster began, he allowed himself to believe they might actually survive this nightmare. These Deathworlders weren't just coming to save them. They were treating the galaxy's most dangerous region like their personal playground. The moment the human rescue fleet arrived at the dying Star's Grace, everything changed. Captain Velox watched through his bridge windows as 50 Earth ships emerged from the chaos of the void sector like ghosts materializing from a nightmare. But these weren't the battered, half-destroyed hulks he expected to see. These ships looked like they had just left port for a Sunday cruise. What happened next made Velox question everything he thought he knew about the nature of courage itself. Without any hesitation or safety meetings or risk assessments, human engineers were already suiting up and stepping out into open space. Not the safe, protected space near peaceful worlds, but the raw, deadly vacuum of the void sector where cosmic radiation was strong enough to cook flesh off bones in seconds. Through his observation deck windows, Velox could see them clearly. Men and women in bulky radiation suits floating in the killing zone between ships, manually installing massive life support boosters to the Star's Grace's damaged hull. The radiation meters in his own ship were screaming warnings about lethal exposure levels, but the humans worked with calm precision, as if they were fixing a leaky pipe in their backyard. "This is impossible," whispered his chief engineer, a brilliant scientist who had designed ships for 40 years. "The radiation levels out there would kill any known species in under 30 seconds. How are they surviving?" But surviving wasn't even the right word. The human engineers weren't just enduring the deadly conditions. They were thriving in them. Velox watched one human woman actually stop her work to wave at the terrified alien children pressed against the passenger deck windows. She gave them a thumbs up before returning to welding massive support cables in a radiation field that should have turned her into ash. The real miracle was happening with the supply runs. Captain Tom Wilson piloted a small human shuttle called Mercy run back and forth between the rescue ships and the cruise liner, carrying emergency food, medicine, and water to the 50,000 stranded passengers. But the path between the ships was a nightmare of electromagnetic storms that turned space itself into a light show of deadly energy. Lightning bolts the size of skyscrapers crackled through the void, each one carrying enough power to fry every computer system on a normal ship. The electromagnetic pulses should have turned any vessel's electronics into molten scrap metal. But Wilson flew through the storm like he was driving through a gentle rain shower. His pilot, Lieutenant Amy Foster, seemed almost bored by the deadly spectacle around them. Through the communication channel, Velox could hear her humming an Earth song while navigating through energy discharges that looked like the birth of new stars. When a particularly massive lightning bolt split the space directly in front of their shuttle, she simply adjusted course slightly and kept flying. "Beautiful aurora today," Foster commented casually to Wilson as another wave of deadly radiation painted the space around them in brilliant colors. "Reminds me of the northern lights back home, except these ones could vaporize a mountain." Velox finally couldn't contain his amazement any longer. He opened a direct communication channel to Admiral Thompson, his voice filled with desperate curiosity. "Admiral, please, you must explain this to me. How are your people doing this? My computers classify the conditions out there as instantly fatal. The radiation alone should have killed your crews the moment they left their ships. The electromagnetic storm should have fried every piece of equipment you have." Thompson appeared on the communication screen, and Velox was shocked to see the human leader looked completely relaxed. He wasn't sweating or showing any signs of stress. If anything, he seemed mildly amused by the question. "Captain Velox, I think you're forgetting something important about humans," Thompson said with a slight smile. "Our ancestors didn't evolve on some peaceful garden world with perfect weather and gentle sunshine. They survived ice ages that lasted for thousands of years. They lived through volcanic winters where the sky was black with ash for decades. They endured global pandemics that killed millions but somehow kept going." Thompson gestured toward the deadly space around them where his people were working. "Earth tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. Earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, droughts, plagues, predators, poison, radiation from our own sun. We learned to adapt to conditions that would wipe out most species because we had no choice. Adapt or die." Through the passenger deck windows, Velox could see something that broke his heart and filled him with wonder at the same time. Alien children, some barely old enough to walk, were pressing their faces against the glass to watch the human rescuers work. These children belonged to species that lived for hundreds or even thousands of years in perfect safety and comfort. They had never seen real danger, never witnessed actual courage. But these humans, who lived such short lives compared to other species, were risking everything they had to save complete strangers. They weren't doing it for money or fame or political advantage. They were doing it because it was the right thing to do, and because someone had to. "Captain," Thompson continued, "this isn't some impossible miracle we're pulling off here. This is just Tuesday for us. This is what humans do." The evacuation that should have taken days was completed in just 8 hours. Captain Velox stood on his bridge watching in amazement as the last group of passengers transferred safely to the human ships. 50,000 beings from 12 different worlds, all saved by a species most of the galaxy considered primitive barbarians. The human rescue fleet had transformed their military vessels into floating cities of hope. Admiral Thompson's flagship Resilience now housed over 5,000 alien refugees in what used to be cargo bays and training facilities. The humans had given up their own sleeping quarters, their recreation areas, even their dining halls to make room for the stranded passengers. Velox walked through the temporary refugee centers aboard the human ships and saw something that would stay with him forever. Human crew members were sharing their own food rations with alien children. Earth doctors were working around the clock treating radiation sickness in species they had never encountered before. Human engineers were jury-rigging life support systems to work with alien biology they barely understood. And through it all, not a single human complained. Not one asked for extra payment or special recognition. They treated this galaxy-shaking rescue operation like it was just another day at the office. The star's grace itself was another miracle. What should have been a complete write-off was now limping through space under its own power again. Human engineers had performed repairs that alien experts said were impossible. They had rebuilt the engines using spare parts that shouldn't have worked together. They had welded hull breaches shut while floating in the deadly radiation of the void sector. How did they fix our quantum drive cores with primitive human tools? Velox's chief engineer kept muttering to himself. The metallurgy alone should have been incompatible with our systems. As the convoy of human and alien ships finally reached the safe outer edges of normal space, Admiral Thompson received a priority communication from Earth. The hologram of Fleet Commander Rodriguez appeared on his bridge, looking expectant. "Well done, Jack. That was one hell of a show you put on out there," Rodriguez said with obvious pride. "How did the crew handle their first deep void rescue operation?" Thompson looked around his bridge at his officers, all of whom were calmly running post-mission reports like they had just finished a routine patrol. Lieutenant Foster was actually yawning as she filed her shuttle flight logs. Captain Hayes was already reviewing maintenance schedules for her ship. "Good training exercise, Commander," Thompson replied with a slight shrug. "Hardly lost any paint on the hulls. The crew performed exactly as expected. I'd say we're ready for the real challenges when they come along." Rodriguez laughed. "Only you would call saving 50,000 lives from the void sector a training exercise. The alien media networks are calling it the miracle of the century." "Sir, with respect, this wasn't a miracle," Thompson said seriously. "This was just humans doing what humans do. We see people in trouble, we help them. We see impossible odds, we find a way through. That's not special. That's just who we are." Meanwhile, Captain Velox was composing the most important message of his long career. His report to the Galactic Federation would change the course of interstellar relations forever. His hands shook slightly as he typed the words that would reshape how the galaxy viewed humanity. The response from the Federation came faster than anyone expected. Within 72 hours, Earth received an official communication that made Admiral Thompson smile for the first time since the rescue began. "Earth Command, this is Federation Council President Nalox," the message began. "On behalf of 147 member worlds, we formally request that humanity establish a Galactic Rescue Corps. We are prepared to fund, supply, and support human rescue operations throughout Federation space." The message continued with details that made even hardened Earth military officers pause in amazement. Over 100 worlds were volunteering to pay for humanity's rescue missions. They wanted humans stationed in every dangerous sector of the galaxy. They were offering to build special bases designed specifically for human crews who could operate in conditions no other species could survive. But the real impact of the rescue became clear in the weeks that followed. Alien children across the galaxy started drawing pictures of human rescuers in their art classes. Young aliens began learning Earth languages and studying human history. The most popular holovids suddenly featured human heroes saving the day against impossible odds. The species that had once been dismissed as violent Deathworlders were now seen as the galaxy's greatest protectors. Worlds that had refused human visitors now begged for human rescue stations. The same radiation-soaked, disaster-prone planet that had been considered a cosmic joke was now viewed as the training ground for the universe's most capable heroes. Captain Velox kept a copy of his final report framed on his wall for the rest of his life. The last line became famous throughout the galaxy, quoted by politicians and philosophers, taught in schools and repeated by parents to their children. "When hell itself blocks the path, send the humans. They'll find a way through." The void sector still raged with its deadly storms and crushing forces, but now it served as a monument to something greater than destruction. Somewhere in that chaos, the wreckage of what should have been the galaxy's worst tragedy reminded the universe that sometimes the most dangerous species could also be its greatest hope. And in the deepest, darkest corners of space, when disaster struck and all seemed lost, a new prayer was whispered by desperate voices across 1,000 worlds: "Send the Deathworlders. Send the humans."